There's something about Aries that's hard to ignore. You feel it the second they enter a room. This burst of energy, this magnetic confidence that demands attention without even trying. They talk fast, move fast, think fast. You don't meet an Aries, you survive them. And depending on your vibe, that can be either thrilling or completely overwhelming. They're not the type to wait around or play it safe. Aries charges ahead. They don't ask for permission, and they definitely don't wait for approval. That's part of what makes them inspiring, but also why they rub so many people the wrong way. There's no middle ground with Aries. You either love the fire or get burned by it. And let's not lie to ourselves. Everyone knows an Aries who's just a lot. Loud, impulsive, a little too honest for their own good. The kind of person who's fun at parties, but maybe not the one you want as your roommate or boss. They'll say what you're thinking, but wish they hadn't. They'll do what you were afraid to do, but somehow make it your problem when it backfires. Still, under all that intensity, there's something honest and kind of raw about them. Aries doesn't fake things. They don't play mind games. What you see is what you get, which is refreshing until it's not. Because as much as people are drawn to Aries, there's a reason they often leave a trail of annoyed coworkers, exes, and exhausted friends behind them. So what exactly pushes people over the edge when it comes to Aries? What makes their fire go from warming to scorching? Let's start with two of the biggest reasons people say they just can't stand Aries. Number one, their energy is too much. And no, we don't mean too much in a cute, quirky way. We mean too much, like you've just had a long day. Your phone's on 5%, your soul is on 1%, and then an Aries comes crashing in like a Red Bull in human form. Aries wakes up ready to sprint through walls. They're the people who text you at 6:32 a.m. with "let's go hiking" or "you up? I had a business idea." There's no warm-up, no easing in, just action. They don't walk, they storm into rooms, they talk like they're trying to beat a buzzer. Every story they tell feels like it has an exclamation point. They live loud and they expect you to keep up. And while that energy can be magnetic, especially at first, it can also be exhausting. If you're someone who likes peace, quiet, or even just a moment to breathe, Aries can feel like trying to nap next to a marching band. They never stop. Their minds, their mouths, their bodies, constantly in motion. And it's not just physical energy, it's emotional too. They throw their whole heart into things until they don't. 1 minute, they're obsessed with a new idea, a new relationship, a new plan. The next, gone, on to the next thing. That high-speed passion can be exciting until it leaves you behind in the dust, wondering what just happened. There's an impulsive fire in them. It burns fast, hot, and without warning. And if you're not built for that pace, you're going to get scorched. Not because Aries wants to hurt anyone, but because they're simply moving too fast to notice who's getting burnt in the process. And this leads us straight into the next thing that gets people heated about Aries. Number two, they have zero filter, like none. Let's talk about honesty. We all say we want it, but when honesty shows up wearing boots and no chill, suddenly we're not so sure. That's Aries. They'll tell you your haircut doesn't work. They'll say your idea makes no sense. They'll tell your date they can do better, and they'll do it with a completely straight face. Not because they're trying to be mean, but because they genuinely think they're being helpful. And maybe they are, sometimes. That kind of brutal honesty can cut through fake niceties and surface-level small talk. Aries doesn't waste time sugarcoating anything. They believe in truth, even when it stings. But here's the problem. Not everyone asked for it. Not everyone is ready to hear the rawest version of the truth right now. In public, in front of other people, with no warning. Aries doesn't mean to offend, but they often do. And if you call them out on it, they'll probably say something like, "What? I'm just being real." Which only makes it worse because they genuinely don't see how their words could be taken personally. They think their straightforwardness is a virtue, and to some degree, it is. But there's a difference between honesty and tact. And tact, that's a foreign language to many Aries. They're fluent in action, not diplomacy. Now imagine pairing too much energy with no filter. You've got someone bouncing off the walls, talking a mile a minute, saying everything that crosses their mind. For introverts, empaths, or just people who enjoy a little personal space and emotional buffering, that combination can feel like emotional whiplash. And here's where it gets even trickier. Aries doesn't understand why people take it personally. They're not trying to insult you. They're just being real, and they expect the same in return. They don't take things to heart easily, so they assume no one else does either. That disconnect causes friction, misunderstandings, hurt feelings, broken connections that Aries didn't even realize were breaking in the first place. But the deeper truth behind both of these traits, their relentless energy and lack of filter, is that Aries has no pause button. They're wired to move forward, to speak out, to act on instinct. They don't sit around analyzing. They live in the moment, sometimes to a fault. And while that makes them incredible in certain situations like crisis leadership, creative bursts, or hyping you up before a big challenge, it also makes them kind of dangerous in others. Social dynamics, relationships, teamwork, all things that usually benefit from a little pause, a little thought, a little filter. But Aries doesn't wait for the moment to be right. They make the moment happen and let the rest catch up. Still, if you've ever been close to an Aries, you know they mean well. They're not malicious. They're just wired differently. But that difference, that intensity, it can leave people drained, even hurt, even angry, especially when Aries doesn't slow down long enough to notice. And so we start to understand why some people say Aries is too much, not just because of what they do, but how they do it, loudly, immediately, and without hesitation. But believe it or not, we're only getting started, because if there's one thing people really can't stand about Aries, it's what happens when competition kicks in. Number 3, everything is a competition. And I mean everything. We all know someone who turns a casual conversation into a debate, or a chill game night into the Olympic finals. That person, probably an Aries. For them, competition isn't something that happens occasionally. It's a way of life. And it's not always about trophies or obvious wins. Sometimes it's subtle, like needing to have the funniest story, the most dramatic breakup, the busiest schedule, or the most intense opinion in the room. Aries wants to lead, to win, to dominate, and they often don't even realize they're doing it. You say you've had a long day. Aries had a longer one. You're feeling stressed. Aries is carrying the weight of the world and still showing up. You got a promotion? Aries will politely congratulate you and internally start planning how to outdo it. Now don't get it twisted. This isn't about envy. Aries doesn't want to be you. They want to be better than you. It's not personal. It's instinct. And that can be inspiring. Aries motivates people to level up. Their drive can light a fire under you, push you out of your comfort zone, and make you feel like anything is possible. But here's where it becomes a problem. Not everything in life needs to be a battlefield. Not every dinner conversation needs a winner. Not every group project needs a boss. People start to feel overshadowed, dismissed, overwhelmed, especially more sensitive or collaborative types who value connection over conquest. Aries might see themselves as just being passionate, but others often experience it as aggressive, dismissive, or even arrogant. And the worst part? Aries will rarely see that, because that brings us directly to the next point. Number 4, Aries thinks they're never wrong. Now this one is a classic. If you've ever tried to argue with an Aries, you probably still have the scars. And not because they're mean, though they can be harsh in the heat of the moment, but because it's like trying to argue with a brick wall that has a megaphone strapped to it. Aries has strong opinions, sharp instincts, and an unwavering belief in their own perspective. When they speak, they know they're right, even when they're not, especially when they're not. And look, confidence is good, but unchecked confidence, that's dangerous. Here's how it usually plays out. Someone gently challenges Aries on something. Maybe it's a small correction, a different viewpoint, a mild suggestion. Instead of considering it, Aries goes full defense mode. Suddenly it's not just a disagreement, it's a war on their intelligence. They'll double down, talk faster, talk louder, repeat the same point 10 different ways until the other person just gives up. Not because Aries convinced them, but because they're too tired to keep going. And if Aries does finally realize they were wrong, you might get a reluctant shrug, a quick change of subject, or if you're lucky, a joke to cover up the awkward moment. An actual apology? Rare. Not impossible, but rare. Because in Aries logic, admitting fault feels like weakness, and weakness is not something they're comfortable showing. This mindset doesn't just affect arguments. It shows up in relationships, at work, in decision-making. Aries will go with their gut, make a big call, and then bulldoze through any doubt. If it works out, great, they're the hero. If it doesn't, well, they'll spin it into a lesson or shift the blame so fast you'll think it was never their idea in the first place. And again, it's not always intentional. Aries truly believes in themselves. Their self-trust is unmatched, and that's admirable. But it also makes it incredibly hard for them to reflect, to adjust, or to take in criticism, even when it's constructive. People around them often feel unheard, steamrolled, or just plain frustrated. It's not that Aries is a villain. They're just stuck in a mindset where being wrong feels like a defeat. And for someone as fiercely competitive as Aries, defeat is unacceptable. This combo of constant competition and being allergic to admitting mistakes creates a very specific kind of chaos, one where Aries is always charging ahead, even when everyone else is asking them to slow down. One where they push people away, not out of malice, but because they're too busy proving themselves to notice the damage in their wake. And yet, despite all this, they still pull people in. That fire, that drive, that passion, it's magnetic. People admire Aries for their boldness, their bravery, their refusal to back down. But admiration and affection aren't the same thing. You can admire someone and still feel completely drained by them. You can look up to someone and still need space from their intensity. And when that space isn't respected, when Aries keeps pushing, competing, talking over others, and refusing to reflect, that's when admiration starts to slip into frustration, even resentment. Now, some signs might back away quietly. Others might confront Aries head-on. Good luck. But almost everyone who gets close to Aries eventually hits that wall. The realization that no matter how much they try to reason, compromise, or explain, Aries is already sprinting towards the next hill to conquer. So if you've ever felt like you couldn't breathe around an Aries, or like your ideas didn't matter, or like every moment turned into a power play, you're not alone. But as intense as all that sounds, we're not done yet. Because as overwhelming as Aries can be in competition or conflict, there's another side of them that drives people equally crazy, one that seems almost contradictory, but makes perfect sense once you understand how Aries operates. We're talking about the chaotic way they start things and never finish them. Let's get into reason number 5 and reason number 6 and take a look at what happens when Aries runs out of steam. Number 5, they start everything and finish almost nothing. Aries is the zodiac spark. They're the match that lights the flame, the idea generator, the first one in the room to say, let's do this, with bright eyes and burning excitement. And let's be clear, that's a gift. Aries has this rare magic. They believe anything is possible. They begin with so much power, it's contagious. Suddenly, other people are excited too. The energy is high. The project feels alive. But then, time passes. And Aries, they're already gone. On to the next idea, the next thrill, the next spark. It's not that Aries is lazy or flaky. That's not fair. They're passionate. They just lose interest fast. As soon as the novelty fades, so does their motivation. As soon as something requires patience, structure, or follow-through, they hit a wall. And instead of climbing it, they pivot to something shinier. This shows up in every part of their lives. Relationships, they dive in head first. It's all fire and romance at the beginning. Deep talks, big plans, over-the-top affection. You think it's something real until Aries gets bored or distracted or frustrated. Then they're distant, cold, or MIA altogether. Not because they stopped caring, but because the rush is gone and Aries runs on adrenaline, not emotional maintenance. Jobs? Aries is that employee who shines during the first month, full of ideas, enthusiasm, and initiative. But by month 3, they're annoyed by the routine. They want more stimulation, more freedom, more movement. If they don't get it, they check out, or check out loudly. Even hobbies, routines, or goals follow the same pattern. One day it's, I'm starting a podcast. Next week, it's abandoned for painting, boxing, skydiving, or maybe becoming a crypto expert. Their interests rotate at breakneck speed, and while variety is great, Aries leaves behind a trail of half-built dreams, abandoned partnerships, and projects that never had a chance to bloom. People who work or live with them often feel like they're constantly picking up the pieces, trying to stabilize what Aries exploded into existence and then walked away from. This inconsistency is exhausting. It can feel like you're stuck on a ride with someone who's always pressing eject just when things start getting good. But it's not personal. Aries doesn't mean to leave people hanging. They just chase momentum and struggle when things slow down or get complicated. They love the start, not the slog, the sprint, not the marathon. Still, if you're someone who needs consistency, dependability, or just a little emotional predictability, Aries will test every last nerve you've got. And if that wasn't enough, there's another layer to this chaos. It's one of the things that makes Aries so unforgettable, and for many, nearly unbearable. Number 6, they're too intense all the time. Let's be honest. There's no such thing as a low-key Aries. It's not in their DNA. Aries doesn't enter the room quietly. They crash in emotionally and energetically. Everything is dialed up to 11. If they're happy, you'll know. If they're mad, you'll really know. There's no subtlety, no emotional in-between. Aries lives at the extremes. This can be exciting at first. Their enthusiasm is infectious. Their passion makes you feel seen, heard, even adored. They hype you up like no one else. They make life feel big. But over time, that high emotional volume can become too much. Arguments escalate fast. What started as a small disagreement turns into shouting, door slamming, or dramatic ultimatums. Aries doesn't do calm confrontation. They do emotional warfare, and they usually don't hold back. Even their love can be overwhelming. When Aries is into you, they go all in. They want your time, your attention, your energy. All of it, now. And while that level of intensity can feel flattering, it can also start to feel suffocating, especially for people who value space, slow growth, or emotional regulation. The truth is, Aries feels everything deeply, but they often don't process it before reacting. So instead of sitting with their feelings, they explode them outward. And guess who gets hit? Everyone around them. Friends can feel like they're constantly putting out emotional fires. Partners can feel pressure to match Aries' high level of passion, it's 24/7, or risk being accused of not caring enough. Co-workers might avoid collaboration just to dodge the roller coaster. And here's the kicker. Aries isn't trying to be overwhelming. They just are. They genuinely don't understand how someone could interpret their intensity as too much, because to them, it's just being real, honest, alive. But for many people, that level of intensity is unsustainable. It burns hot, fast, and without warning. And even if it's rooted in love, it can still leave scars. So now we've seen Aries from two angles: the passionate starter who rarely follows through, and the emotional powerhouse who can't turn down the volume. They're thrilling, yes, but they're also inconsistent and explosive. And yet, people stay drawn to them. Why? Because deep down, Aries has a kind of magic. They don't fake their feelings, they don't play games, they care hard and live loud. But that fire, that unpredictability, it's a lot. And it doesn't always leave space for others to breathe. So what happens when this intensity spills into every single moment? When Aries can't sit still, slow down, or just relax? That's where we're headed next. Let's talk about reason number 7 and reason number 8, and why Aries' restlessness and constant motion can be just as challenging as their fire. Number 7, Aries can't sit still, and we're not just talking about physically, though yes, Aries fidgets like it's a competitive sport. We're talking about their entire being, their mind, their goals, their lifestyle. It's all in constant motion. Aries is a sign that thrives on movement. Stillness feels unnatural, even threatening. They need to be doing something, chasing something, building something. or they feel trapped. This is the person who's booked every weekend for the next 6 months, who gets anxious during quiet moments, who makes spontaneous decisions just to shake up the monotony. And while that energy can be contagious in the right context, it can also feel like chaos to anyone who values rhythm, rest, or stability. Imagine trying to spend a quiet Sunday with an Aries. They're bouncing off the walls, talking about 3 new projects, and already suggesting a last-minute road trip. Even their version of relaxing looks like organizing the garage, learning a new skill, or researching how to start a side hustle. You want peace. They want motion. And if you try to slow them down, they get cranky, not angry, restless, like a lion pacing in a cage. Aries doesn't do pause. They do go. And being still makes them feel useless, stuck, or bored out of their minds. This makes long-term relationships especially tricky, because most relationships at some point need calm, a slow season, a deeper phase beyond the excitement. But Aries often struggles here. They confuse stillness with stagnation. If it's not thrilling, they assume it's broken. If it's not growing fast, they fear it's dying. Which brings us directly to the next point, one of the most emotionally complicated traits Aries brings to the table. Number 8, they love you hard, then disappear. Let's be real. When an Aries likes you, it's impossible not to feel it. Their affection is loud, fearless, and often intense from the start. They're the ones who text first, make bold moves, say, "I love you" before anyone's ready. It's intoxicating. You feel chosen, pursued, seen, but there's a catch. Because once they have you, something shifts. It doesn't always happen immediately, and it's not always malicious. But many people who've dated or been close with an Aries have experienced this same pattern, a fast, passionate beginning followed by distance, space, silence. Sometimes they ghost. Sometimes they pick a fight just to create distance. Sometimes they just emotionally check out without warning. And the worst part, you never see it coming, because in the beginning, Aries makes it feel so real, so intense, so all in. You start imagining the future. You start trusting the fire. And then, without explanation, the fire's gone. Or worse, it's directed somewhere else. Why do they do this? Because Aries is driven by instinct, not strategy. They love based on the moment, the spark, the adrenaline. And when that energy dips, as it naturally does in any human connection, they don't always know how to handle it. They don't pivot into deeper intimacy. They panic or disconnect or chase the next high. This doesn't mean Aries is incapable of deep love. Far from it. But consistency, emotional patience, learning to be present even when it's not exciting, that takes growth. That takes work. And let's be honest, work isn't exactly Aries' favorite word. Their emotional attention span can be short, and unless they've developed real self-awareness, they'll keep repeating the cycle. Chase, capture, retreat. What's hard is that the people they leave behind are often left confused, hurt, and doubting themselves. Because Aries doesn't always explain. They just vanish, or they downplay everything. Or worse, they rewrite the story in a way that protects their ego and ignores your side entirely. And here's the thing. Aries doesn't mean to be cruel. In fact, many don't even realize how deeply they affect people. They truly believe in every word they say when they say it. But once that internal switch flips, they move on with the same speed and certainty that once pulled you in. It's emotional whiplash. To love an Aries is to constantly question the temperature of the room. Is it burning hot, freezing cold? Will they call? Will they vanish? Will they stay? And for many people, that emotional inconsistency is too much to bear. Now, if you're someone who also loves fast, who thrives on chaos, who doesn't mind riding the emotional roller coaster, then maybe you can match Aries at their pace. But if you're someone who needs emotional safety, who needs time, who values slow building trust, Aries might feel like a storm you're not equipped to weather. But again, and this is important, they don't do any of this because they're bad people. Aries is learning as they go, feeling their way through life. They often look back and realize they hurt people unintentionally. And if they do reflect, they'll carry deep regret. Still, the pattern exists. The intensity, the sudden distance, the restless heart. It's all part of the Aries fire, and it's why so many people walk away from them feeling burned. But Aries won't stop moving just because someone gets left behind. That's the thing. They're already on to the next challenge, the next spark, the next moment that makes them feel alive. And speaking of challenges, there's one Aries trait that causes more damage than all the others combined when things get heated. A trait that turns arguments into explosions and turns minor conflicts into unforgettable feuds. Number 9, Aries does not argue. They go to war. We've all had disagreements. They're a normal part of any relationship. But a disagreement with an Aries, that's a whole different arena. Aries doesn't just argue their point. They launch into it. The volume goes up. The tone shifts. The intensity takes over. And before you know it, you're not even arguing about the original issue anymore. You're in the middle of a verbal battlefield. Why? Because Aries feels attacked by even the slightest challenge. Their instinct is to fight, not discuss. It's part of their Mars-ruled DNA. When something threatens their pride, even a little, their whole system kicks into defense mode. You could be saying something as simple as, "I didn't love how you said that." And to Aries, it registers as, "You don't respect me." So they come back hard, fast, loud, sharp. They interrupt. They talk over you. They escalate, not to hurt you, but because they honestly believe they need to win. Aries isn't trying to understand. They're trying to prove. And in the middle of that firestorm, there's no room for nuance, no room for softness. If you're someone who shuts down under conflict, you'll probably find yourself stunned into silence. If you're someone who fights back, now you're both on fire. What makes this worse is how quickly it happens. 1 second you're having a calm conversation, the next it's yelling, accusations, or walking out the door. Aries doesn't ease into confrontation. They jump into it head first, weapons drawn. But here's the twist. After the explosion, they move on, fast. They think, it's over. We yelled, it's done. Meanwhile, you're sitting there emotionally wrecked, trying to figure out what just happened. Aries has already made a snack and moved on with their life. This creates a huge disconnect, because while Aries processes in a blaze and lets it burn out quickly, others take time. Others feel shaken. Others carry that emotional fallout long after the Aries has forgotten it. And unless Aries learns to pause, to soften, to actually listen during conflict, they risk losing relationships. Not because they don't care, but because they don't realize how hard they hit when they're in battle mode. Conflict is a test of emotional maturity. And for Aries, it's one of the hardest tests to pass because it goes against everything they instinctively do. React quickly, fight back, assert dominance. They have to unlearn the idea that every disagreement is a threat, that every correction is an insult, that every emotional conversation is a fight to be won. Until they do, people will keep walking away. Not because they don't love Aries, but because they're tired of going to war just to be heard. Now let's take that same intensity and look at how it plays out in another area that drives people completely crazy. Number 10. Aries is notorious for leaving things half done. We touched on this earlier when we talked about Aries being starters, not finishers, but it runs deeper than just losing interest. It's a pattern that shows up in their personal, professional, and creative lives, and it drives people absolutely nuts. Here's what it looks like. They start a passion project. They buy all the supplies, design a logo, maybe even post about it online. Week 1, they're obsessed. Week 2, they're distracted. Week 3, silence. Or they promise to help with something, organizing a trip, leading a team, taking on a task. At first they show up, ideas, energy, motivation. But as soon as it requires structure, patience, or repetitive effort, they check out, disappear, or worse, pretend they didn't commit in the first place. In relationships, this might show up as big declarations, intense beginnings, deep plans, and then nothing. Ghosting, emotional distance, avoidance. Not because Aries is malicious, but because the fire that fueled their motivation burned out, and they don't know how to operate without that fire. They're great at beginning, at sparking inspiration, at launching things into the world, but what Aries often lacks is follow-through. the stamina to keep going when it's no longer exciting, the maturity to stick around when it gets boring or hard. And the problem isn't just that they stop, it's that they often don't tell anyone. They vanish, leave projects unfinished, leave people hanging. It's not just inconsistency, it's abandonment of responsibility. To those around them, it feels like betrayal. It feels like broken trust, because people counted on them, believed in the vision, took them seriously when they said, "Let's do this." And again, Aries doesn't mean harm. They just get stuck in a loop of impulsive action, followed by quick disinterest. They thrive on potential, not process. And unless they consciously work to build discipline and commitment, they'll keep creating messes they never clean up. This frustrates everyone, from romantic partners to business collaborators to friends who just wanted help moving. And it's ironic, because Aries hates being called unreliable. They don't see themselves that way. They see themselves as passionate, driven, high energy. And they are. But passion without discipline, that's chaos. And chaos, no matter how charismatic, always leaves people cleaning up afterward. So what happens when Aries combines all of these traits, their conflict style, their inconsistency, their emotional extremes, and applies them to how they view themselves? That's when we run into the next problem. Because Aries doesn't just burn others. Sometimes their biggest blind spot is staring them right in the mirror. Number 11. Aries has an ego the size of a small planet. Now hold up. We're not here to shame confidence. Confidence is a good thing. We need more people who know what they bring to the table. And Aries does. There's no pretending, no overthinking, just raw, unshakable belief in themselves. And you know what? That's magnetic. It's powerful. It's why Aries often rises to leadership roles, why people follow them, why they stand out in a crowd. But there's a line between confidence and ego, and Aries crosses it more often than they think. Here's how it shows up. They can't admit when they're wrong. Not really. Not in a deep, vulnerable, "I messed up and I see how I hurt you" kind of way. Maybe they'll say a quick "my bad," but it's usually brushed off or masked in sarcasm. Or worse, they act like nothing happened and expect you to move on too. Why? Because Aries sees admitting fault as weakness. They're terrified of being seen as less than, of losing control, of not having the upper hand. That fear makes them defensive. It makes them stubborn. It makes them dismissive, not just of criticism, but of any emotional truth that makes them feel small, unworthy, or flawed. And here's the kicker. Most Aries aren't even aware they're doing it. To them, they're just being strong, just moving forward. But in reality, their ego becomes a wall between them and actual growth. People try to tell them how they feel. Aries shuts it down. People try to show them the impact of their behavior. Aries deflects, or flips it, or makes you the dramatic one. It's like trying to water a plant with a closed lid. The message just can't get in. And that wall, it keeps Aries stuck. Because how can you grow if you're never wrong? How can you heal if you don't think anything needs fixing? Their ego becomes both armor and prison. It protects them, but it also isolates them. And eventually, people stop trying. They give up on getting through. They leave quietly or loudly, but they leave. And Aries left behind doesn't always understand why. Because from their perspective, they were just being real, just doing their best. But what they were actually doing was refusing to look inward, refusing to hold the mirror long enough to see the cracks. But nothing blocks love, trust, or accountability like ego. And Aries has a lot of unlearning to do in that department if they want to truly connect on a deeper level. And now, we come to the 12th and final reason, the one that ties everything together. Number 12, Aries acts first, regrets later, if at all. Let's be real. Impulsivity is Aries' brand, but they speak without thinking. They jump without checking the depth. They fall in love in an afternoon and move on by morning. They quit the job, buy the plane ticket, cut someone off, all in a single burst of emotion. And sometimes that's inspiring. We need people who break the mold, who take risks, who don't overanalyze everything. But when those decisions affect other people, when Aries blows up a friendship, walks away from a partner, or burns a bridge because of a moment of anger, it creates pain that can't be undone with a shrug. Aries doesn't always pause to consider the long-term impact of their actions. They don't check in with their future self. They don't always ask, will I be proud of this tomorrow? They just act. And when it backfires, sometimes they pretend it didn't happen, or they rewrite the narrative to make themselves feel better, or they simply move on, assuming everyone else should too. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, when the noise dies down and Aries is left alone with their thoughts, they do feel it. The regret. The maybe I overreacted. The maybe I shouldn't have said that. The maybe they didn't deserve that version of me. But by then, the damage is done. The message is sent. The door is closed. And for Aries, admitting they missed someone, or that they were wrong, or that they acted from fear or pride, that's one of the hardest pills to swallow. So they don't. They let time pass. They act like they're fine. But underneath all that fire, there's a buried grief, a quiet mourning for the people and opportunities they pushed away too fast, too recklessly. And this is where Aries is their own worst enemy, because their refusal to feel fully, to sit in the discomfort of their own actions, keeps them from healing, from learning, from reconnecting. They tell themselves they don't regret it, but deep down, they do. They just don't know how to come back from it. And that's the real tragedy of Aries. Their fire is beautiful, but it's also destructive. It clears the path, but sometimes it burns the bridge too. Still, even with all these reasons, even with all the fire, the chaos, the ego, and the mess, there's something magnetic about Aries, something that makes people stick around longer than they should, something that makes them unforgettable. Maybe it's the honesty, maybe it's the bravery, maybe it's the way they make you feel alive, even in the middle of the storm. Whatever it is, people don't just hate Aries, they're drawn to them, obsessed, haunted, because Aries, for better or worse, doesn't leave people untouched. So now that we've laid it all out, the passion, the pitfalls, the 12 brutally honest reasons people struggle with Aries, what do we do with that? How do we wrap up this emotional roller coaster? So, we made it. 12 reasons. 12 brutally honest, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes hilarious truths about why Aries can be one of the most loved and most hated signs in the zodiac. Let's take a breath. Because if you've been nodding your head, shouting, "That's so true," or quietly texting this video to your Aries ex while sipping tea, yeah, we see you. You know by now that Aries isn't easy. They're not quiet. They're not chill. They're not slow to act or afraid to speak. Aries is the fire starter, the pioneer, the emotional flashbang. They say what others only dare to think, and they live in motion. Let's look back for a second. We started with number 1, where we talked about that too much energy and the no-filter combo that makes Aries feel like a human espresso shot with zero lid. Then came number 2, the competitive drive and refusal to be wrong. Aries isn't just passionate. They're built for dominance, even if it means ignoring logic, nuance, or your feelings. Number 3 and 4 expose the start but don't finish chaos and the romantic roller coaster. How Aries can ignite something powerful only to walk away when the adrenaline wears off. Then we dove into number 5 and 6, where we saw how restlessness and intensity don't just create action, they create instability, the kind of emotional heat that some signs just can't survive on long term. 7 and 8 revealed the way Aries can love you hard and disappear just as fast. One day you're their whole world, the next you're wondering if you imagined the connection at all. And of course 9 and 10 showed us how Aries handles conflict with a flamethrower, and how their short attention span turns projects, relationships, and promises into unfinished business. Finally, we explored 11 and 12, and those might have hit the deepest. Aries' ego, their fear of being wrong, their tendency to act without thinking, and their struggle to ever circle back and clean up the emotional mess. Put all of this together, and you get a sign that's electric, unpredictable, raw, and unforgettable. That's the real truth about Aries. They leave an imprint, whether it's love or war, a spark or an explosion. They don't do forgettable. And maybe that's why people feel so strongly about them. You don't just know an Aries, you remember them. But here's something important I want to say, especially if you're an Aries watching this. This video isn't about tearing you down. It's not about saying you're bad or too much. It's about understanding. Because truthfully, most people don't hate Aries because they're heartless. They hate Aries because they're powerful, raw, real, and that kind of energy makes people uncomfortable, especially if they're not used to fire. But if you're an Aries willing to reflect, to slow down, to look inward just a little, you can be unstoppable. You can turn all that raw energy into something life-changing, not just for you, but for the people lucky enough to be close to you. And if you're not an Aries, now you know why they are the way they are. You don't have to agree with it, but maybe you can see them a little more clearly. Maybe you can meet them halfway. Now, before you click away, let's talk about you. If you've enjoyed this video, if you've laughed, nodded in agreement, or learned something new about yourself or someone you know, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Secret of the Zodiac. Seriously, hit that button. We're building a space here for astrology that's honest, funny, insightful, and sometimes just a little savage. With love, of course. We drop videos like this regularly, diving into each sign with the respect, realism, and wit they deserve. Don't miss out on what's coming next. Like this video if it hit home. It helps us reach more people, and it tells us you want more content like this. Drop a comment below. We want to hear your stories. Have you ever loved or barely survived an Aries? Are you an Aries who's guilty of any of these? Which of the 12 reasons hit hardest for you? We want the real tea. This community grows through your voice, your experience, your take. So don't hold back. Let's make the comments section a wild, fiery therapy session. And one more thing. If you love what we're doing and want to help keep it going, please consider supporting us through Super Thanks. Running a channel like this takes time, editing, research, energy, and yes, actual money. Your donation, whether big or small, directly helps us cover costs and bring you more videos, more frequently, with even higher quality. Think of it like buying us a coffee or helping fuel the fire, Aries style, so we can keep creating content that makes you laugh, think, and yell, yes, at your screen. So if you believe in this channel, in this work, and in the power of truth-telling through astrology, hit that super thanks button. It truly means the world to us. It keeps this community alive and growing. From all of us here at Secret of the Zodiac, thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this wild, wonderful ride. And whether you're an Aries, dated one, avoided one, or are still recovering from one, we'll see you in the next video.